Good morning, dear ones. This week's weekly word, this devotional, is coming to you from the book of James, chapter 2, verses 12 and 13. And we're going to be focusing on the last sentence of 4 words. It says, "Speak and act as those who are going to be judged by the law that gives freedom, because judgment without mercy will be shown to anyone who has not been merciful." And here's the 4 words. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Now, this is a massive statement. In some ways, it seems as though it might be counterintuitive. Mercy triumphs over judgment. A triumph in ancient Rome was actually something that very few generals got to have. A triumph was a massive parade displaying your military might and victory. And so mercy displaying its might and victory over judgment is what's going on here. And mercy doesn't seem like something that would have pomp and circumstance. Mercy doesn't seem like something that would have a big parade and show off its vanquished enemy. Unless its vanquished enemy is judgment. This is within the context of the book of James, where it's talking about loving your neighbor, the royal law, the law of liberty, the law of freedom, the law of love. It says, in fact, before what we just read, it says, if you really keep the royal law found in Scripture, love your neighbor as yourself, you are doing right. But if you show favoritism, you sin and are convicted by the law as law breakers. And this is that context of the passage where the law is an integral thing. It's a single thing, the law is. It's one law. And so whether you commit murder or not doesn't determine whether you're a lawbreaker or not if you break a different law. In this passage, adultery. It says if you don't commit one of those and yet commit the other, you're still guilty as a lawbreaker. Now, apply this to the royal law found in Scripture to love your neighbor as yourself. Well, that's being merciful. And if the law is to be merciful, and you're not merciful, you have broken the law. The fascinating thing here is it says that those who do not show mercy will be judged without mercy. And so you get to determine whether or not you're going to be judged mercifully or harshly according to the law based upon how you judge others. So, my dear friend and neighbor, when you see somebody doing something you dislike, maybe even despise, put your face superimposed on theirs and realize that the manner in which you judge them will determine the manner in which you yourself will be judged. And sure, maybe you weren't rude to the cashier, which you shouldn't be anyway. Maybe that's not what you struggle with. But maybe you have a different sin that you struggle with. Do you want your God to be merciful to you? Then you should be merciful to others. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, after all, certainly applies here. Now, this idea of law, I want you to realize, is a law that gives freedom. Most people view law as restrictive, as limiting, as negative. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other thing. Law gives freedom. Law states, within these boundaries, you are free to act without reprisal. Law dictates, stipulates, lays out in black and white a clear picture of where you are free. Think of the law in many ways as a property boundary. So long as you stay on your property, you are free to act as sovereign on your property. In much the same way, the law is not something which binds and negates and presses us down and crushes us and limits our capacities. Rather, law is seen as the capacity to set us free. And the law specifically spoken of in the book of James is that of loving your neighbor as yourself. Allow them to do on their property and their life as you would want them to allow you. It is the old classic liberal view. I might disagree with what you just said, but I will fight to the death to defend your right to say it. Our country, our world, ourselves, we all need a lot more mercy and a lot less judgment. May our great God and King bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may you represent him in the world well. Thank you. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night.